Hello. What is in a logo? It could be a mighty fortress that protects the public image of a company, or at the very least an icon that acts as a seal of approval for fans and loyal customers. For me, one of the most memorable logos in tabletop history has to be the impenetrable fortress of Games Workshop's miniatures manufacturer. But how were those towering walls originally built? I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today we're exploring the history of the Citadel itself. Founded in 1979 when Bryan Ansell first pitched a dedicated miniatures manufacturing firm to Games Workshop co-founders Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson, Citadel Miniatures has long been a powerhouse in the design and production of cutting-edge wargaming figures. And for the last 40 years, it has had pretty much the same logo, a timeless, magnificent and dark Citadel. Now, I owe a great deal to the Realm of Chaos 80s blog for this video. The blog post that looks at the origin of the Citadel logo has pulled together a load of conversations from Facebook between ex-GW staffers, so I've included a link to that blog post in the description below. It's really worth a quick look. There's some fascinating information in there. And I've also included in the description a link to my Patreon, so if you want to support the work that I do here on the channel, feel free to take a look. In the early days, Citadel was founded to make miniatures for use in role-playing games, but Bryan Ansell was always keen to find ways to encourage players to buy even more minis. So, under his guidance, Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 were created by Rick Priestley and Richard Halliwell, and those games required loads of minis. Citadel wouldn't be the only miniatures manufacturer that GW stocked though. Later on, Marauder Miniatures, which would be founded in 1988 by Citadel sculptors Ali Morrison and Trish Carden, would produce a range of GW compatible models. The Marauder company would eventually be folded into Citadel though, and by the 90s, Citadel itself was no longer operating as a distinct entity from Games Workshop, if it ever really had. It did though retain its brand identity on miniatures boxes and paints even to this day, and over the course of its lifetime, the Citadel logo remained pretty much unchanged the entire time. In spirit at least. Over the decades, the logo has remained largely the same, a dark and foreboding tower from which legendary models sally forth. White Dwarf issue 11 from February-March 1979 announced the arrival of Citadel Miniatures, and standing proud right there in the first ever advertisement is the Citadel logo. Almost every subsequent issue of White Dwarf over the next few years would feature an advert for the evolving Citadel range, and more often than not, it would include the Citadel as well. In a Facebook post around 2014, Games Workshop legend Tony Ackland recalled, "The original logo and the image came from Alby Fjor. Where he got the idea from, I have no idea. Alby Fjor, or Fiore, I apologise because I don't know exactly how to pronounce the name, worked with Games Workshop in the early days of the company, and was a long-time contributing editor to White Dwarf, especially for things like the D&D monster sharing Fiend Factory column. Interestingly, in White Dwarf issue 9, there is an advert for the Judges Guild. That was Bob Bledsaw's publishing company that produced D&D supplements in the late 70s and early 80s, and which was distributed in the UK by Games Workshop. The image in the advert bears a certain resemblance to the Citadel logo that would debut just a few months later. Sadly, I've not been able to find out exactly who drew that particular logo, though that same issue did feature the magazine's first ever mini dungeon, the Lichway, created by none other than the feature editor, Alby Fjor. He became perhaps more famous though, for his later career as a crossword puzzle setter. His crosswords were regularly featured in the Financial Times under the name Satori and in The Guardian under the name Torpy. In 2009, Alby sadly passed away at the age of just 63. Bryan Ansell added to the discussion. Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone, Alby and me gathered in the upstairs room above the first GW shop to talk about the name of the new company and its logo. I don't think it took us very long. Alby had been to an exhibition of the Mad King Ludwig of Bavaria's castles. He chose the one that became the logo. It was a castle that was never built, but you can see bits of it in the finished ones, I think. Alby did the art. King Ludwig II of Bavaria reigned from 1864 to 1886, and during that time he was known variously as the Mad King, the Swan King, and the Fairytale King. All of those nicknames were owed to his obsession with extravagant architectural projects. He liked to build castles. Over the course of his life, he commissioned the construction of many prestigious palaces and magnificent mountaintop castles, including, and apologies for some of these pronunciations, Herrenchiemsee Palace, Linderhof Palace, the incomplete Falkenstein Castle, and the incredible Neuschwanstein Castle, the latter of which seems most likely to have been Fjor's inspiration. I've always thought that the Citadel logo was a constant, but I'm quite wrong. As Tony Ackland says, it has undergone changes over time, some of them quite subtle. After a period of adverts that didn't feature the Citadel, it did return to White Dwarf in 1983's issue 45, albeit in a slightly modified form, taller and thinner than before. Interestingly, while Citadel adverts continue to appear in White Dwarf, this was the last sighting of the Citadel Tower in the magazine for quite some time. Meanwhile, a new version of the logo, much closer to the original but with more detail and a slightly revised architectural shape, would appear in compendiums, journals, and flyers. This version of the logo finally hit White Dwarf with issue 59. Whilst it's not clear who drew each of these updates to Fjor's original, there may have been a few artists involved at different times. Tony Ackland has since stated that he redrew the logo because the original was so small and its use became somewhat limited. There are variations of the tower here and there, some in colour, some with red lighting, and some such as the one on the Rogue Trader spine, where it has what appears to be sci-fi detailing. Bryan Ansell also stated that Dave Andrews did another version that could go on Citadel blister packs. Ansell also discussed the origins of the other important part of the company branding. The Citadel name was me. I thought it was a solid, dependable sort of name. Some of my favourite appearances of the logo are in early White Dwarf adverts in 1982, the Citadel itself being incorporated into the image. This procession of zombies emerged from the Citadel in White Dwarf 32, whilst the similar approach taken for this Christmas advert in White Dwarf 36 makes it play like a little bit of consumerism satire in retrospect. If you've made your way through my interactive history of fighting fantasy, then you will already know that Steve Jackson made sure to include a cameo from the Citadel in one of his book covers. The cover for his first solo fighting fantasy book, Citadel of Chaos, features a version of the Citadel logo on its original cover, and Jackson even included the word Citadel in the book's name as a subtle bit of cross-promotional advertising. As pointed out by Louise Sugden at Rogue Hobbies, there's also a hidden cameo from the Citadel logo on a miniature. The back of a book that can be found on the Chaos Space Marines Terminator Lord kit features the Citadel logo. Also, you should absolutely watch Louise's video on weird Citadel miniatures if you haven't already, because it's terrific fun. The changes to the design settled down by the 90s, and it does seem like the final stones in the Citadel logo that we know and love today were laid in place by the time Citadel Miniatures was fully subsumed into Games Workshop operations. These days, the Citadel logo is sadly a rare sight, replaced more often by the Warhammer logo. But the Citadel name is still going strong, as dependable and solid as ever. It is sometimes easy to forget that whilst the history of Citadel and Games Workshop is full of visionaries and legends, it has always, it seems, been a hugely collaborative effort, relying on the passion, artistry and talent of a great many individuals. Individuals like Alby Fjor, who has certainly had a lasting impact. Many such contributors to the creation of this hobby that we love don't get thanked nearly as much as they should for everything that they have done to build it into what it is today. For what it's worth, this is a thanks from me. So there you have it, a brief history of the logo for Citadel Miniatures. A logo that I think is iconic, an absolutely incredible piece of art that has stood the test of time. I've got a lot of nostalgic associations for that logo. Obviously a lot of my memories are tied up with products that had the Citadel castle on it. Whether or not that has influenced my view of it, well, of course it has, but I still think that it is timeless and would stand alone, even without all of those memories. It's a simple, effective piece of artwork that just tells the story in one image of the kind of worlds that you're going to be getting into if you get involved in Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000. As I say, I've included a link to the Realm of Chaos 80s blog post that inspired this video in the description below. Go and give it a read if you want to find out more. It's a really fun piece, and there's loads of other great articles on there as well. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and of course, I always welcome you subscribing to the channel and supporting the work that I do here. Thank you very much for watching. I am Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. Can someone who is an expert in Lego design a Lego ideas for the Citadel logo? I am fully prepared to destroy Hogwarts to build it.